Okay, well, thanks for coming out to Herrington Harbour's diesel basics class today. This is Segal. He has AR Marine Diesel, which is located just right around the corner here. He's been a diesel mechanic for 31 years, and he's been a certified instructor at the Annapolis School of Seamanship for 16 years. So you guys are in good hands now, and hopefully you'll learn a lot. So I'm Brad Wells. I do the events and newsletters and stuff like that here at the Marina. If you have any questions, you can catch me after class. We also have a fishing seminar after this class, too. Anybody wants to stick around, we have a few seats available for that as well. So that would be with Charlie Sisson in the back there. So anyway, I'll hand it over to Scott Segal, and here we go. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Welcome. Like Brad said, my name is Scott Segal, and I'm going to be doing a short seminar. This is basically a sample of the course that I teach up at the Annapolis School of Seamanship in Annapolis, and this is basically the opening 45-minute section of it, and then we're basically done this, so we can open it up for questions and answers if you want, or I can keep going. But most people have a lot of questions, so we'll probably just stop at the end of this PowerPoint and then move to the just question and answer segment. All right, so a lot of people need to know their diesel. These are the main reasons why people want to know their diesel engine. So you got your do-it-yourselfers. You got people that just want to be able to speak intelligently with the mechanic. Just remember that might be a one-sided conversation, depending on who you end up talking to. And I've heard some wild stories of people breaking down, going up and down the ICW where there's no marinas around, they're pulling into someone's farm, and it's bubble coming out to work on their engine. You know, they work on tractors, you know, so but the good thing is these diesel engines aren't that much different than a tractor engine. The cooling system's different, but the actual main theory behind the diesel engine is all the same throughout all the diesel engines, whether it's driving a transmission propeller, or if it's turning a back-end electrical generator, or if it's moving a tractor or a front-end loader or 18-wheeler. It's all the same theory behind it. Then we have people who want to know their limitations. How far can they work on their engine before they need to call in a professional? And it may not be that you don't know how to do the repair. It might be you need a special tool that might run $800. Are you going to spend $800 on a tool you use once, or do you hire someone who already has that and pay them, $100 or $200 for a couple hours to do the repair? So you just have to balance your budget with that. And then you have people that want to be able to handle their own breakdowns and not have to make that phone call there to both US or to Segal. And the reality is, 90% of the time, you won't have to make that call. If you have a decent spare parts kit on board and a decent set of tools. 90% of the time, they're fairly easy fixes. Now, there's 10% of the time where something major component breaks, and you can't fix it without having something rebuilt or buying in this high-dollar item that you're not going to typically keep on board as a spare. And then you have other people that are untying and they have to be self-sufficient. They're going out in the ocean and cross ocean passage. Maintenance and effective troubleshooting and repair, that's what we're going to be talking about. So the main things are components of fire, what compression ignition is, fuel atomization and injection, properties of diesel fuel, and what the four-stroke cycle is. So our diesel engine is an internal combustion engine, which means there's a fire inside the cylinder. So we have to know fire. So this is what's known as a fire triangle, and we use a triangle because there's three components that have to be present for fire to exist. If all three components aren't present, then you're not going to get fire. So we have these three items here. So we have air, we have fuel, and heat. So with the fuel, we have something to burn. In this case, it's going to be diesel. Heat, you need heat to be able to burn the diesel. And air, if you look this up on the internet, it's not going to say air here. It's going to say O2, which stands for oxygen. But our engines don't breathe pure oxygen. Our engines breathe a mixture of gases, and that mixture of gases we call air. So we we put air here. And when all three of these sides are in balance, the engine runs nice and smooth. The exhaust coming out the back of the engine is nice and clean. But when these three sides get out of balance, that's when we have a byproduct of smoke coming out the exhaust. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the air side, which is the easiest side to diagnose. And a lot of engines will have an air filter. So this engine doesn't really have an air filter. It's got an air box with a big coarse screen in it, and it's just to keep the squirrels out. But a lot of engines will have an element that you can replace. And this element can get clogged with belt dust, exhaust soot. You keep a pet on board, pet hair, and so that will restrict the amount of air getting into the cylinder. Because we need the proper amount of oxygen in the cylinder in order to burn the amount of fuel we're spraying in properly. And if you can't get the ratio correct, then we're going to be heavy with the amount of fuel we're spraying in. And so the fuel's going to heat up, but there's not going to be any oxygen in contact with it, and that fuel's not going to burn. So it's going to heat up, turn to carbon, and it's going to come out the back of the boat as black smoke, which is heated up fuel that you did not put to work. You paid for that. All that black stuff you see flying out, you paid for that. And you didn't put it to work. You didn't get the horsepower out of it. But the air not only has to get into the cylinder, that air has to leave the engine also. So any restrictions in your exhaust system creates back pressure. So if you can't get the exhaust out of the back of the boat fast enough, you're not going to get the right amount of air into the engine quickly enough. So again, you're not going to get enough oxygen in, you're going to have black smoke. So what are the main items in the exhaust system that give us problems? The exhaust mixing elbows. So here we have a typical, very popular style Yanmar exhaust riser. This unit's made out of cast iron. Its lifespan is about 5 to 10 years before it built up carbon and the actual metal swells and starts restricting the airflow going through it. So this is a 5 to 10 year item. There's a couple companies, if you search the internet, where you don't have to buy the cast iron ones anymore. You can buy aftermarket ones which are made out of either bronze or stainless steel, which is about the same price as the Yanmar iron ones, but it's going to last you 20 years. So I have to do it every 5 to 10 years.
Could you show that placement on the end?
It would be right here. So this one has a stainless steel elbow on it, so this would be kind of bolted right there. This doesn't actually fit this engine, but it would be bolted to the back of the exhaust manifold with that. The seawater injects right in this nipple right here, and there's a coolant passage before it actually enters the exhaust gases. Because the reason we inject water into the exhaust is to cool it down. Because our exhaust temperatures are going to be running anywhere between 500 and 1,000 degrees, which is really hot.
Doesn't the seawater have to inject on the downside of that?
It does. Like I said, there's a passage, a channel that's in the top of it. And that channel, it doesn't inject until right before the hose connects. So it is on the downward side of it.
So what is the best way to check the LD?
The easiest way is to pull the hose off and then get a good LED light and shine it up into the abyss. And if you don't really know what you're looking at, you may or may not see that it's clogging up. And so the trained eye has seen what the new ones look like versus what the restricted ones. And sometimes it's not restricted where you can see, it's restricted at the peak or the other side. So, and usually the engine will have signs that it's clogged, like you'll have, the exhaust will be black, you might have black powder on top of the water coming out the exhaust. That's a good indication of the restriction. And also the, hard starting, not get the exhaust out quickly enough to make it hard starting. running, especially, I've seen them almost 100% clogged, and the engine's still starting to run, but there's no power, so you have a major loss of power. And if you have one of the smaller Yanmars like the GM series and the YM series, they use a foam filter on the which is on the outside of a metal cage. A lot of times the foam will have a hole in it where the back pressure is blowing air out the intake because it can't get the exhaust out the normal exhaust passage. And so, right where this horn is, so you see you have a hole right here where the air is actually going into the metal unit. Right where the foam is right there, the air is blowing backwards, it actually blows that foam out of there. And so that if you have a hole, just a single hole in your foam filter, it's a good indication you have too much back pressure.
Sorry, what was that part again that we're talking about that is clogged?
That's the exhaust riser,
Exhaust riser.
or it's actually mixing up with the riser, just means that it's elevated. Because we want a nice downward flow from the mixing elbow down into the muffler. Yes?
Instead of replacing the mixing elbow, could you just clean it out?
Your cast iron ones you can't clean. I mean, in an emergency, you can try and gingerly chip away the carbon, but you have a fairly high chance of accidentally poking through the coolant passage where the seawater is.
That's mental deterioration.
Yeah, because the iron gets real brittle. And if you do that, then if you start the engine, then seawater can back up into the engine, and then you have a major problem. All right, so we need good air going in, good air coming out, and so we talked about the exhaust riser having a problem with carbon buildup, but the exhaust hose also, if you have too many 90-degree elbows or 45-degree elbows in your exhaust system, that each bend starts adding back pressure. And also, the hose itself is a marine exhaust hose is a 2-ply hose with wire around between the 2 layers, and then the layers are glued together. Now, if you ever lose the impellers off your raw water pump and you stop the flow of seawater through that hose properly, that exhaust is no longer getting cooled down. So we have that 800 to 1,000 degrees running through that hose. And what happens is that heat causes the inner layer of the hose to heat up and blister, and it will separate from the outer hose and start restricting the exhaust coming out. But if you look at the outside of the hose, you can't tell. It's not going to be burnt through, it's not going to be cracked. So if you ever lose all your impeller blades, or most of them, while you're at cruise RPM, don't just change the impeller and find the broken pieces. Pull that exhaust hose off the mixing elbow, shine a light down it to see if it's blistered. It's going to happen within the first foot after the mixing elbow. That's where the heat's going to be the hottest. If it's blistered, go ahead and replace that section of hose. All right, some other things that can affect the air side of our triangle. Let's see, the altitude. Most of us do our boating at sea level, so that's usually and if you're below sea level, you usually have a moisture problem. Unless you're submarine. But the hardest one to troubleshoot for the air side of the triangle is what we call the ambient engine room temperature. So the actual temperature of the air in the compartment that's feeding the engine. Because you have this, especially sailboats, the engine's usually in a small box, and you soundproof it, because who wants to hear it running in your galley? So it's in a nice little tight box, and the air in that box gets hot. And so it can cause smoking problems, because the hotter the air, the thinner it is. So that the molecules are more expanded. So there's less oxygen given volume in hot air. So it's chemistry class. Hot air rises, cold air sinks, it's more dense. So the same thing happens, so that happens in our engine compartment. So if you have a blower on your boat, diesel boat, you're supposed to be running that blower while the diesel engine's running. That blower's there to evacuate heat from your engine compartment. Versus on a gas boat, you turn and run your blower before you start the engine because gasoline vapors are explosive. And you want to evacuate those explosive vapors before you start the engine. And if you pay attention between the two boats, the blower hose on the gas boat goes down to the lowest point in the engine room because gas vapors sink. And on a diesel boat, the blower hoses should be at the top of the compartment because that's where the heat is to pull the heat off the compartment. So why is this the hardest one to troubleshoot? Because you're having a smoking problem, you call the mechanic comes down. What's the first thing the mechanic does when he gets on board after reading it? He opens up the engine compartment, looks over the engine, checks the fluids. All right, let's go for a ride. So now he's taking the box off. Now the engine's sitting in a big room of cooler air. You go on the ride, engine performs perfectly. Collects his check. Good luck. Next time you take the boat out, boom, it's back. And but there is a tool you can buy to help you out with this. And this tool you can get for Lawn and Garden Center, and it's one of those indoor-outdoor monitors where you have a sensor. You put it out in the garden, and it will tell you what the temperature is, what the barometric pressure, and the moisture, and all that kind of stuff. And so you can use that as a test tool. You put the sensor at the top of the engine compartment, put it all back together. The panel is wireless, so you can have it at your helm. You go for a ride, and you can actually monitor what the temperature of the engine compartment is. And it runs you about $15, $20 for that too. Okay, we were looking for temperatures below 130 degrees. The cooler, the better. So 120 to 100 degrees is, an okay zone. But once you start climbing closer to 130, that's when you're going to start seeing some smoking problems. And not only do we have smoking issues, but our alternators have fans on them. And those fans are there to cool the alternator down. So once that engine room temperature gets too hot, then the fan doesn't cool the alternators efficiently, and it starts damaging the alternators.
Just when you're referring to smoking issues inside the engine
No,
compartment?
out the exhaust.
Out the exhaust.
This outside of it.
And what kind of smoke? White or?
It'd be black.
It'd be black.
Yes, right now we're talking about overflowing or under airing, which is black smoke. All right, so that's the air side of the triangle. The heat side of the triangle, we get that through the compression of air. And so we compress air by using a piston. So this is a piston with rings on it, which it gets sealed to the cylinder walls with the piston rings. This is a little cylinder head off a little gas engine. It works as good for a show and tell. We've got valves in the top of this, or the bottom of the cylinder head, which allows air to enter and leave the cylinder. And so when we compress the air, it's not that we're adding any heat to the air. Each molecule in that air has a certain amount of temperature to it. And when you compress those molecules together, they bang into each other, creating friction. And that friction causes heat. And when you pack that into a really tight little space at the top of that cylinder, the temperature goes way up. So we're going to go from roughly 70 degrees Fahrenheit up to almost 1,000 degrees up inside that cylinder. And the ignition point of diesel fuel is roughly, if you look it up on the internet, it's about 492 degrees Fahrenheit. So when you spray that fuel into a 1,000-degree environment, it auto ignites. So as soon as you atomize that into that hot environment, it just burns. And then you get the expansion of the gases, which forces the piston down. So we get the heat through the compression of air. Now some engines may have a starting aid. So some engines have a glow plug, or glow plugs, one per cylinder, and you use those to start them when the engine's cold. Even if it's 95 degrees out, you still gotta use your glow plug for your initial start while the engine's at room temperature. Now you may get the engine started by giving a little extra crank without using them. That's not good for the engine. Glow plugs are there, use them. 15 to 20 seconds on the glow plug, and then crank and start the engine. The other thing that affects our heat side of the triangle is our cranking speed. We have to crank this engine very quickly. If you don't crank it quickly, you're not going to create 1,000 degrees in the cylinder like we're supposed to. So bad batteries, bad cabling, worn out starters can cause that diesel engine to crank slowly. So if your diesel engine's going rah, 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 it's not going to start. You may get a gas engine to start that way because it uses a spark to ignite the fuel gas mixture. But a diesel engine is not going to ignite because you're not going to create enough heat. The fuel side of the triangle, we want good atomized fuel going into the cylinder. And so the finer mist we can make, the cleaner the burn is going to be. So what we're looking for is on our engines, so we compared a spray bottle. So we get a Windex bottle and we spray it, we kind of get this spittle of liquid coming out. And then if we take an air freshener and spray that, we got a nice fine mist coming out of it. We're looking for that air freshener spray coming out of our injectors, really fine mist. Now the most modern engines, which are what we call the common rail fuel injected engines, the fuel doesn't come out as a fog. The fuel comes out of those injectors almost like a cigarette smoke. That's how fine the spray's coming out. And that's why all of our engines are moving towards the electronic engines, is because the finer you make the fuel mist, the more burn you're going to get, the cleaner the emissions is going to be. And so in order for all these engines to pass the emissions tiers that are coming, most engine manufacturers are starting to move towards the electronic fuel injected engines. All right, so what we'd like to do is use the fire pit as a teaching aid. So I'll put a fire pit here in front of the room. I'm going to cut a log roughly about 20 inches long. I'm going to put that log in the fire pit. I'm going to light that log on fire. What part of that log is burning? The outside. Why?
It's got heat air.
That's the only part of the fuel that's in contact with air. Even though the center of the log might be hot enough to burn, but there's no oxygen in the center of the log, so the center of the log doesn't burn. Only the outside of the log burns. So that log is going to give off a certain amount of flame, a certain amount of heat, which is measurable in BTUs. So it's going to give off a certain amount. But if I took that same log and I split it into 5 pieces, and I put that into the fire pit, lit that log on fire, same amount of fuel, I'm now going to have more flame, more heat coming off of that same amount of fuel. Now I'm going to get more power out of that log. Now if I took those 5 pieces, ran through a wood chipper, lit that on fire, exposed even more of it to oxygen, more power. And if I took those wood chips, turned it to sawdust, immediately, so we're looking for sawdust, coming out of our fuel injectors. Unfortunately, once we get time on our injectors, we have things that start going wrong. We get carbon building up on the tips, which can make the spray pattern come out incorrectly. Inside of the fuel injector is a big heavy-duty spring which holds the needle closed. And so most of us in here are probably going to have hydraulic, mechanical fuel-injected engines, which means it takes fuel pressure to cause the needle inside that injector to lift off its seat before the fuel will spray out. So there's a big heavy-duty spring holding that needle closed. And fuel pressure coming from the injection pump is being delivered to the injector. And then once enough fuel pressure is achieved, then the spring compresses, the needle lifts off its seat, and the fuel sprays in. But what happens to springs over time? They get weaker. So let's say this injector is supposed to hold this needle closed until it gets, just call it 2,300 psi of fuel pressure. And then the spring will compress, the needle will lift off, and the fuel will spring in. But the spring, we now have 800 hours on this injector. So the spring has weakened over time. So instead of taking 2,300 psi to cause that spring to compress and lift off its seat, now maybe it only takes it's 1900 PSI. So what's going to happen? It's going to open early and close late. So now we're spraying more fuel into the cylinder than it was designed to. More fuel, not enough air, again, black smoke. Or you may not see black smoke, but you may see it at the dock, at the fuel dock when you're buying fuel, because you're using more of it. But you're actually not putting it to use though. Now our mechanical fuel injected engines, it's a hydraulic process. So here's an injection pump off a 2-cylinder engine. This is a drop-in style injection pump. So this sits on top of a camshaft. And a camshaft is a shaft with cams on it. Well, what's a cam? A cam, Reader's Digest version, a cam is a bump. So it's a shaft with bumps on it. And those bumps push on things. So one example is it's pushing on the plungers of the injection pump. Something else that cam may push on, it may push on our push rods, which move up, which causes our rocker arms to move, which open and close. Actually, it opens our valves. Big heavy-duty springs on the top of the cylinder head is what closes the valves. So those springs that you see on the top there is what closes the valves. So, and the way this works, you get a measured amount of fuel inside of the plunger, which then the cam comes around, pushes up the plunger, and it squeezes that fuel through a tiny little hole. And once that fuel goes through a little hole, it's going to go from low pressure fuel, which is going to be anywhere between 2 and 40 psi, and it's going to drive that fuel pressure up anywhere between 2 and 4,000 psi. So then that fuel goes to the injector, which then we have that needle holding, being held down by another spring. And so it's a hydraulic process. Liquid is not compressible. That's how hydraulics work, because the liquid is not compressible. So if we get air inside this injection pump, air is compressible. So that means when we go to squeeze that fuel, we get air in that plunger, the air is going to squeeze down, but we're not going to deliver any fuel to the injector. So what happens, that injector doesn't spray, that cylinder doesn't fire. If you have enough air, it's going to cause enough of the plungers to not send fuel, so then the engine stalls out and then won't restart until you bleed the air out of the system to where it then will start working again. So that's why when we do our service to our fuel systems, it's very important to make sure we get all the air out of the system. Otherwise, it can defeat our fuel system, and then we're dead in the water. Any questions on anything we talked about prior time?
Can you just briefly describe the difference between that process and the common rail?
Okay. Okay, a common rail engine has, well, they have 2 pumps, but there's one high pressure pump. There's a low pressure pump which delivers the fuel to the high pressure system. Then there's a high pressure pump. So let me move this. All right, so here we can see an injection pump. Obviously, I'm sitting down, you can't see. But we have an injection pump. This is a gear-driven pump. We've got 4 plungers on this. And we have individual fuel lines, one going to each injector. So we have individual plungers, and one's going to each injector individually. On a common rail engine, there's only one fuel line. So there's a high pressure pump delivering not 2 to 4,000 psi of fuel pressure. It's delivering between 20 and 60,000 psi to a rail of fuel. So there's a rail, and each injector is connected to that rail. And each injector has an electrical solenoid on it, sometimes 2, and which is controlled by a computer. And the computer is connected to all these different sensors all over the engine. So the computer knows what the engine coolant temperature is, what the exhaust temperature is, what the temperature of air going in, what the barometric pressure, and it's taking all these different calculations and going, okay, how much fuel can I spray into this cylinder without making smoke? That's what this computer's doing. And the computer can change the timing of when it sprays the injectors or the fuel into the cylinders. And so it's very smart, and that's why, one of the reasons why we are moving towards that technology. So now, even like the Yamar line, they go from the largest engine all the way down to the 37 horsepower engine now has the computers on it. So, and it's a fine and dandy type of system right now if you're just doing your boating in the U.S. But if you're planning on crossing the oceans or going into third world countries, it may not be the best technology to have because you may not be able to get anyone to work on it. Because the test tool to plug into the computer on the engine runs about $3 grand. You know, and so every shop is not going to have it. So, unfortunately, you know, so eventually, you know, it's going to be more like the automotive industry where you got your OBD2 connections where one tool can connect to every diesel engine. But right now, it's not like that. Even Yamar's line, they have 3 different computers. So that's $9,000 worth of test tools. And for most shops, it's going to be like, okay, I might see 5 of those engines a year. And you're going to spend $9 grand to work on 5 engines. So only if you're a really large shop are you going to invest into those testing tools. But like I said, the computer will get all these different signals from all over the engine, and it's going to determine how much fuel can spray into the cylinder without making any smoke. And so because the fuel pressure is in that rail, it just needs to open the solenoid and the fuel sprays in. So it's the computer that decides when this fuel goes into the cylinder. And on a mechanical fuel injected engine, there's only one fuel injection event. Fuel sprays in, that's it, it's done. On an electronic common rail, we can have up to 7 injection events. How is that fast? I don't know, but it gets a little solenoid working very quickly. And so a mechanical fuel injected engine, you know, the engineers have designated, you know, when they designed this engine, what the variables were set at. So they're going to say, okay, this engine is going to be running, the outside temperature is going to be 90 degrees. The coolant temperature is going to be 168 degrees. The barometric pressure is going to be at this number. And so when all these variables are where they designed this engine to run at, it's going to run nice and smooth, no smoke out the exhaust. But as soon as those variables get out of whack, now we have smoking. So if you were to start your engine today, a mechanical fuel injected engine, we're probably going to be blowing a whitish blue smoke out the exhaust because the temperatures are cold. It's not, you know, 90-degree temperatures going into this engine. So, but the computer, electronic fuel injected engines, help do away with that because the computer is smart enough to change the amount of fuel that's being sprayed in and how much and when to spray it in. It actually changes the timing on the fly.
This is the most common you'll find in older boats.
Yeah, you're gonna find this in all older boats, yeah. Unless it's been repowered.
Hey Scott, question on bleeding, the fuel. If you've just done a routine service and replaced the fuel filter, is it sufficient to just crack the bleeder on the fuel pump and manually finger it until you've got fuel, or do you have to crack each injector line?
The only time you have to bleed the high pressure system is if you put air in it. So until you start the engine with air in the low side, install the engine out, you don't have to bleed the high side.
So as if you ran out of fuel.
Well, that's putting air in, right?
That's what I meant.
Well, I mean, theoretically, there could be air just in changing the filter.
Right, and that's what, and then we have to bleed out the low side. So this engine has a bleed point up here at the top of the secondary fuel filter. That's where almost all the first bleed points are going to be, is on top of the secondary fuel filter. So we would bleed it up here, and then this engine is kind of self-bleeding. So we get 98% of the air out, or 99% from here. Start the engine up. This engine stalls out. This JH series MR. We can then just advance the throttle and crank it for another 4 or 5 seconds, and it'll push the air through the injection pump back into the return system, and the engine will start. smaller version of this engine, the GMs, you know, you get air into the high side, it stalls out and it's not going to restart. And so that engine, the GMs, has a bleed point on top of the secondary and a bleed point at the entrance to the injection pump, which is still low pressure. And most engines will have a mechanical pump. So down here we have a mechanical pump and there's a little lever hanging off the side of it, which you can operate. The lever which will manually operate the diaphragm inside the pump. Some engines have electric pumps, which makes it easier. You just apply power to the electric pump, open your bleed screws, and close them. The rest of the air goes through.
Quick question about smoke. So, you know, there's that old phrase out there that, oh, diesels, they smoke, that's what they do, you know, and so, and then you just alluded a second ago that when you first start your boat up, you can get some smoke out of there. Once the engine's warmed up, should you not see smoke anymore at all? Or is it, I mean, at what point do you say, I see smoke, I gotta get to work on something? Is anything acceptable?
In theory, once the engine's at operating temperature, it shouldn't smoke.
Okay.
White smoke or any kind?
Any kind of smoke. But you may be chasing a ghost to try and get rid of 100% of the smoke. Because you can just have some, you know, just regular bad fuel or older fuel can cause smoking. You know, so there may not be anything wrong with the engine, it may just be your fuel that you're using that can cause smoking. Or if you're using too many additives in your fuel, it can cause smoking.
What's your thoughts on fuel additives or stabilizers?
Additives, there's a million different ones on the market. You know, the three main additives that you may have to use on your diesel engine is your biocides, which we have things that grow in our fuel. You all probably know it as algae, but there's no algae in diesel fuel. It's microbial growth. So we have microbes that grow in diesel fuel, and so you may want to add an additive, a biocide to the fuel, which will kill the microbes and break them down into a powder form. When microbes are in a colony, it's almost like this brownish black jelly. It's really thick, which will clog your fuel lines and your filters. And so you use an additive of some sort of biocide, which will kill the colony and break it down into powdered form, so if it flows through the fuel lines, be captured at the primary fuel filter. The other additives would be a lubricity product, removing the sulfur out of diesel fuel, which the sulfur is a pollutant, and so by removing the sulfur, we're seeing more and more problems with items on our engines. So our mechanical fuel pumps with the rubber diaphragms, the rubber diaphragms start to swell and get holes in them. Injection pumps, the seals and O-rings are swelling. We're starting to see external leaks and internal leaks into the engine due to the swelling of those O-rings. So there's lubricity products that you can put back into the fuel, which help slow down that process. Now, if your engines are built after 2007 or so, in theory, they're supposed to be designed to have the seals and rubber in there that's not supposed to be as active to the lack of the sulfur. Then the third item that you may need to add to your diesel is a cetane improver. Cetane is a catalyst, which helps the fuel burn, just like octane is in gasoline. So over time, that cetane rating will drop in that fuel, which then that fuel becomes harder and harder to burn. So you can add a cetane improver back into the fuel, which then will make the fuel easier to burn, it'll start up quicker, and have less smoking. I had a customer that had a fairly heavy smoking problem. I did put a cetane improver into his fuel, and the smoking went away. So some of the products really do work.
As of 2015, EPA is requiring now diesel motors for the exhaust fluid gas.
The exhaust fluid?
Yeah.
not in boats.
You're talking about depth.
It's coming out for the boats in 2015 for all.
15?
Yeah, for commercial.
Well, it's 2019.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that's commercial, and then it's coming out for eventually this, because it's already in trucks.
I'm
Familiar with that?
well, sort of familiar with it on the automotive side of things, but I haven't really, I hear whispers about it for boats, but I haven't seen any products that are out on the market yet with it.
I didn't know.
No, everything's gonna eventually come to this, to the marine. We're gonna get the diesel fluid, or exhaust fluid, we're gonna get, catalytic converters, it's all coming. Gas engines already have catalytic converters on them. So all the emissions stuff is coming.
So you said earlier, when the air was cold, you get white smoke out the exhaust. Why is it white instead of black?
Okay, you're the exact opposite. Instead of being fuel rich, now you're oxygen rich. And so it's running lean.
So colder areas have black.
And the cylinders take longer to heat up. And so the cylinders are really cold. And until the cylinders come up, they're gonna be running lean, may not be igniting all the fuel. And so, but it's not enough heat to cause the fuel to turn black. And so it stays in its like atomized type form.
So when the engine warms up, then it'll be, the white smoke will disappear?
It should.
Yeah.
So you're talking about warming engines up, so warming engines down. So now you've been out and cruising around, you come in to the marina here, you're nice and low, you're cruising in, you're getting your slip. How long do you leave your engines run before you shut them down?
I mean, usually, you've already been through the no-wake zone long enough to where the engine, all the cylinders should have equalized all around, and the temperatures all around the block should have re-equalized.
Okay.
So if you go through the no-wake zone, once you get up to the jetty here, by the time you get to your slip and tie up, leave your engines running while you tie up, and then once you get all tied up, that's definitely plenty of time. So you're already looking at like 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes of low RPM running. That's sufficient.
So I don't want to beat a dead horse here real quick, but the glow plug, during normal weather temperature in the summer that we're sailing, we turn the engine up, that alarm is really loud and very irritating. So my question is it 10 seconds? I usually just crank it, I don't even wait, but what's a normal 10 seconds, 5 seconds, and then turn it on? I know it's
Depends on the vintage of your engine.
1999.
99, what engine?
It's a Yanmar.
Yeah, right. 3YM. It's probably, I think you're looking at like 11 seconds.
11 seconds.
And the newer glow plugs, it's like 10 seconds on the glow plug. The older glow plugs, like 90s and older, were about 20 to 25 seconds. The colder it was out, the more likely closer to 25 seconds before you start cranking the engine. Because it takes 15 seconds just to get the glow plug fully lit up. So all the glow plug is if you think back to when you had an electric coil stove when you were younger, it's the same material that glows bright orange. It's the same, the tips. So you gotta turn it on and wait for the tip to glow bright orange, which you can't see it. If you pull it out and put a battery on it, and power to it, you'll see it takes 15 seconds before it's fully glowing.
So, the converse of when you're coming back and letting the engine cool a little bit, what about revving the engine when you just started it? What's your, the engine is still cold or cooler than it will be, so does that make a difference to how much you rev?
Depends on the engine. I mean, if you accelerate the throttle on a really cold engine, you're just going to be making a lot of smoke. So typically the higher the horsepower engine, the more smoke you're going to be making. So a little engine like this, I probably wait 3 or 4 minutes before I increase the RPMs.
So it's kind of the same, if you go out through the wake zone, you're gonna have warmed your engine kind of enough to, once you're out, let's go. It's same thing, it's 3 white engine.
Yeah, I mean, typically, personally, I like to warm the engine up before I even leave the slip. I like to see at least movement on the gauge before leaving the slip. It's just me. Used to have to move boats to get them hauled out for winterization, and And probably, because we were in a big rush, we never let anything warm up. So probably a good 50% of the boats, you start up and the line's taking off. By the time you get past the first turn, then the engine stalls out. Way too many of those things like that occur to where, I always allow temperature to come up onto the gauge before I take the boat out. And it's best if you let it completely warm up. Now, you're not going to get, 6-cylinder engine warming up in the slip. The hottest you might see a 6-cylinder engine get up to temperature might be 130 degrees, even if it has a 180 degree thermostat in it. You just can't create enough heat in the slip.
Question on the cool down time. See, by the time you come to the J's, get in the slip, you're okay to and tie it up. You're okay to shut it down. With turbos, does that change the variable there?
Turbos is the same thing. You want the engine to cool down. You don't want to be going from plain to shutting off without letting that turbo cool down. Otherwise, you're going to burn up the seal rings on the shaft, and then you'll start having oil enter either the intake side of the turbo or the exhaust side of the turbo. And if it's the intake side, then we'll start burning that oil. And if it's the exhaust side, you're going to start seeing the oil sheen in the exhaust system. So you definitely don't want to be doing that. It's usually not too much of a problem in the marine industry. If you have a turbocharged truck or car on the street, that can be a problem. You're on a trip going up to New York or something, you're on the Jersey Turnpike, you decide you're doing 80 miles an hour, you decide you need to pull off to the rest stop, you can go from 80 miles an hour to a parking spot in a minute and a half, which is not enough time to cool that turbocharger down. So if you immediately shut that turbo off, or shut the engine off, you now stop the lubrication oil going to that shaft, so the shaft no longer gets cooled down, so then the rings get burned, and will start to leak.
So I let my motor slip to 165 before I put power to it. When I put power to it, easy or just hit it?
It's up to you.
I get turbo and supercharged.
So your supercharged and turbocharged. So the supercharger is that the electric clutch.
You'd have to
Does it sound like a vacuum cleaner?
No.
Does it kick on and off on
It's
its
just
own?
all over motor.
Although TMD or KMD, or something like that.
Still a good question. D6.
Was that?
It's a D6.
Oh, D6. Yes, the electric clutch. I would just gradually come up. I wouldn't whole shot it like you're pulling a skier. When you go up to 1,500, 500 RPM increments.
It's a nice
Yeah, I don't think it's ever good to just, you test your engine that way. You want it to fail, that's when it's gonna fail.
Just especially on the common rail, I read you're supposed to put it under, I think it's in neutral, but full max RPMs at a certain cadence, like the full time user every 20 hours or something. What's the point, and I guess between the fuel injectors, and then how often should one do that?
I personally never heard that, but, I don't work on a million of those, so I don't know the starting procedures or shutdown procedures of that stuff. It's probably resetting the computer, letting the computers see everything that's going on, and the load on it.
With
Mechanical, that's how we do some troubleshooting, is running up against a pin to make sure we actually achieve the no load RPMs, and
But it doesn't clean the fuel injectors.
that won't clean the fuel injectors. If you have something that may be sticking, it may unstick a needle or something. That's kind of a temporary thing. If you're, and usually that kind of stuff happens to engines that don't get used. When you don't use your diesel engine, that's when they're deteriorating. So the more you use your diesel, the longer it's going to run, the better it's going to run. So if you baby your diesel, it's not going to last its normal lifespan. So if you're worried about, well, I'm only going to run supposed to turn up 3,600, you're shortening the life of that engine because you're trying to baby it. Diesel engines are designed to work. Heat them up, make them work, burn off that carbon, you know, and you're running at too low of RPM and too low of load, you're not creating enough heat to burn the carbon off the valves and everything, so you want that extra heat.
90%, 89%.
Well, in theory, it's 80% full throttle, where most engine manufacturers say cruising speed is. So 80% of your full throttle, and that's something else you should verify, is that you're propped correctly, that you can achieve your loaded RPMs. And if you have an analog gauge, you know, that's an electrical component, so it can be inaccurate I've seen them up to 800 RPMs inaccurate. So the only real way of knowing what your RPMs are is to use a handheld photo tag. So anytime we set up a propeller, you know, for pitch and stuff, we always use a handheld photo tag shining on the crankshaft to see what the actual crankshaft RPMs are. It's a photo tag, which is you put a piece of reflective tape on the pulley, and then it shines a little laser beam on it, and it bounces back and it counts it, gives you a digital to tenths. So it's really accurate. Any other questions?
I'm not sure that I do find the build code on it. I've always just gotten on my boat and started. I really have. I didn't know. I don't have. I mean, I hear the light come on. I can't stand that noise.
Yeah, well, some engines have glow plugs just so those engines can pass the emissions test. So if you have a more modern engine, like the YMs, the Yamaha YMs, those definitely don't need glow plugs to start. They were installed into those engines so they pass the emissions tier on startup, because they couldn't pass the emissions tier at first. So then they put glow plugs in it, got that cylinder a little bit hotter, and they passed the startup emissions test. So the only reason they're there is so they can get the EPA sticker on the engine.
On my boat, the full throttle RPM changes with the amount of load I have on the boat. Number of people, supplies, that kind of thing, fuel, whatnot. Is that normal, first of all? And second of all, when you say 80% of full throttle, is that full throttle unladen or full throttle on that day?
Full throttle in forward. So it sounds like you may have been underpowered, but you don't actually have enough horsepower in that boat. If you add extra crew and weight and gear, it should be able to handle it. You shouldn't lose RPM to an extra 600-700 pounds or 1,000 pounds on the boat.
He could be losing speed, not RPMs, right?
Well, the more load you put on the engine, the slower the RPMs will be. Now, is it creating smoking problems? Yeah. You shouldn't lose RPMs because of the people in gear. So they may have put just enough horsepower in that boat for 2 or 3 person passengers on board.
So, oil changing question. Dispel or validate this, please, for me. So you have, an oil change in my boat's hundreds of dollars. So, life got in the way on any given year, and I only put 25, 40 hours on my engines. Just ended up being a bad boating year. Do I really have to suck all that oil out of that thing? Because what I'm told is because of the sulfur, it'll damage my main and my rod bearings if it sits there. So, at the end of the season, if I only put very few hours on that motor, do I really have to suck all that oil out of there to preserve not damaging those bearings?
You'll probably get away with it. But in the big scheme of things, that oil change is cheap compared to putting a
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, if it's a true statement, then I'm changing my oil, and I did anyway. I have been. I go and get my shells, rotate 20-gallon jugs of oil and schlep them down to the boat and do it. But you know, if that's not a valid statement, then I'm certainly gonna try to save myself some
I
money.
mean, usually they don't make statements like that just to hear themselves talk. But can you get away with it? Yeah. You know, if you only get 25 hours a year on that oil, you know, you'll probably not have any issues.
Thank you.
But I can't say, don't bother with it. You know, I gotta do the legal route and say, well, follow the instructions for the engine manufacturer. Once a season, it will change.
Understood, thank you.
84 3D and 27 horsepower on the injectors. Obviously, I have quite a few hours on there. Probably better just to replace them than try to clean them.
So, the 3GM? Well, you have the options of putting new ones in or getting them rebuilt. You know, so usually rebuilding fuel injectors, it's usually half the price of buying new ones. Especially with like a EMR. If you have an engine that uses a Kubota tractor engine as the base of the engine, you can get the Kubota part number and pay probably 25% of what you would pay for through the marine field. So there's like a massive markup for like, so Universal uses Kubota engines. If you buy the injector from Westerby, because Westerby owns Universal, you're probably paying $500 for an injector. And you buy it through a Kubota tractor company, but you can't tell them it's for a marine, you just give them a part number. You don't tell them what engine you actually have. And you have to do the research yourself to get the part number. And you give them the part number, and you'll probably pay about $50. Yeah, it's a huge markup. I mean, it's even when I have to go buy parts from Western Universal and these other companies, like, ooh, are you kidding me? That's outrageous. I mean, even as a mechanic, I feel for y'all. Any other questions?
I have a Vega Marine in there, and for summer, I never have to heat it up at all. Just crank it, run all the way down to about 60 degrees, and then maybe I'll give it a couple of seconds, and it'll just pop right away. I've never had difficulty with it starting.
Yeah, well, usually engines that have glow plugs, usually they're a lower compression ratio engine. So they're not creating quite as much heat as the higher compression ratio engines. So that's why the glow plugs are there as a cold start until it creates enough heat. Now, there are certain engines which are borderline on whether they really need them or not. And when the temperature does get down low enough, you're going to need to use them.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't start right up without the glow plugs and you're cranking for 10 seconds and trying to get this diesel engine started, then you should be using your glow plugs. You shouldn't be cranking for 10 seconds without the engine starting. Most diesel engines will start within the first 1 to 3 seconds of cranking. That's usually what happens.
How about the heat exchanger problems you can have, symptoms, stuff like that, if the heat exchanger is kind of having issues?
Okay, well, all right, heat exchangers, you have two sides to the heat exchanger. You have the raw water side, which is the seawater running through the tubes, and then you have the antifreeze side of the heat exchanger. And most people think that most of the problems on the heat exchanger is going to be on the raw water side, which is false. Unless you have zinc pencils, and when people change the zinc pencils, the pieces of the zinc have broken off, then yeah, that can cause restrictions because it doesn't dissolve, it doesn't go away. And now it's not really connected to any metal, so it doesn't even continue dissolving from galvanic corrosion. What it does is it gets lodged and starts blocking off some of the tubes, and then it swells out and blocks even more tubes. It becomes like this big calcification on the tubes. But most problems on heat exchangers is actually on the antifreeze side. So all those maintenance schedules that in your owner's manual that tell you to change out your antifreeze every 2 or 3 years, well, it's because there's chemicals in antifreeze that over time will separate out, and those chemicals will start building up on the tubes. It's like this, looks like a slime mud kind of stuff on the tubes, which then becomes a barrier between the coolant and the pipe. So that means the heat's got to travel from the coolant through that mud slime to the copper or Cooper nickel tube to the seawater to leave the engine to cool it down. And so you get that built up, and you may not know it's even built up because most of us only run the engine at, cruise RPM. Most of us don't go to full throttle to make sure everything is working properly on our engines, which you should be running it at full throttle once a day for like the last 3 or 4 minutes before you get to the no-wake zone. Run it up, and what that does, it lets you know the condition of your cooling system. It also lets you know the condition of the bottom of the boat. Do you have a putting green that you're dragging around with you? Have a barnacle reef, all over your front, your propeller and shaft. All these things that you're dragging through is going to overload the engine, and that will show up in your RPMs, and it will show up in your temperature, and they cause black smoke.
Another naive question. When you say full throttle, are you talking about pushing it all the way to the ball, so it hits?
Yep.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Full throttle.
Full throttle.
Oh my God.
So that it actually red lines, the RPM?
Yeah, until your handle no longer moves forward. Once a day for the last like 3 minutes of your trip. That will, what that does is it generate that extra heat. You're going to burn any carbon off your valves, and you get the turbocharger, it runs the carbon off the turbos, and it also is going to give you an idea of the condition of the bottom of the boat, whether you need to be, have a short haul and get power washed and some barnacles scraped off. Because
I'm sorry, so what do you, are you just gonna feel it sluggish, the boat, even at full throttle, the boat will?
Okay, so this engine is a 3,600 RPM engine at full throttle. So if I'm only able to get 3,200, then I know there's a problem in the running gear. And if I'm also seeing black smoke, which means that more than likely I'm overloaded because of the barnacles or the putty ring on the side of the boat. That's overloading the engine, which is making it work harder. And so we'll see an increase in the temperature. And because it's running overloaded, we're going to not be getting enough air into the cylinders. Now, most of our engines are going to be breathing air in and out of the cylinders is determined by how quickly that piston is moving up and down the cylinder. And so if you start overloading the engine, then the piston's not going to be moving up and down, so we're not going to be getting as much air in and out of that engine, but we're still putting enough fuel in to achieve that 3,600. But we're only breathing for 3,200. So we have enough oxygen for 3,200, but we're spraying enough fuel in for 3,600. Fuel air imbalance, black smoke. But plus, we're overloading the engine. We're going to see an increase in temperature also. So that will show up on the temperature gauge if you have temperature gauges.
Do you recommend the use of any pickling products in the raw water circuit when you winterize or when you do a service?
Well, when we winterize, we run a non-toxic -60 or stronger.
No, I'm not talking about antifreeze. I'm talking about actual pickling product that's supposed to clean out the passageways of the raw water tract.
I mean, that would be part of a service, I guess, if you wanted to do that.
Like an acid wash.
Well, yeah, like barnacle buster, you can take her and pellet her out and help it pump and pull the hose off the mixing elbow and just put it back into the bucket and just circulate it for like an hour to clean the raw water side. But like I said, most problems aren't on the raw water side. Most problems are on the antifreeze side of the system.
And in a same vein, is there an anode on the raw water side of the 4JHs?
Probably 3YM plant.
Yeah.
So I stopped looking for it then.
Yeah, the Yanmars that have this style exhaust manifold heat exchanger, where the heat exchanger is built into the exhaust manifold, they don't have zinc in them. Even though the older manual said that the engines have zinc. But these manuals were made for raw water cooled engines and the freshwater cooled engines, and they didn't do a very good job of saying this is for this particular paragraph is for the raw water cooled engines. They didn't separate that. So that was like the #1 question when I was work for a Yamaha dealer at the boat shows. Where's my zinc? Where's my zinc?
I looked for 10 years on my old boat.
How
you tell?
Push it up, back to once a day, pushing it up, the last foot a day. What kind of EGT should you look for? And is that pre or post turbo? Inlet or outlet of the turbo?
What type of what?
EGT. Now, what kind of temperature should you expect that exhaust gas to be, and what's excessive?
Well, it depends on the engine, but you're usually looking somewhere around 900 degrees or so. It depends on the engine as to how much fuel you're running out, how much air, temperature of the air that's going into the engine.
So that why do it throttle better? I've always done it in the beginning. You're saying better to do it on the way in?
Yeah, you want to run it full throttle at the end of the day, that way you're creating excess of heat to help burn the carbon off the valves and the turbos and the rest of the exhaust system. 3 to 5 minutes. I think Yamaha says you can run it at full throttle 10% of the time, which is 6 minutes an hour, which I wouldn't force that issue. Do 3 to 4 minutes is enough to see what the temperatures are doing.
So when I go by all the sailboaters and they're hollering at me, I have
That's right. Exactly. Sorry. They told me to.
Well, you don't want to. If you have someone in a canoe or something. Paddleboarder. Yeah.
If I do that at the beginning of, I'm in a sailboat, I usually do my run up after I get out the channel and I'm going out to the #1 buoy. Because when I'm coming in, I usually wait till I get like right before the channel, drop the sails, and then I don't have 5 minutes of space to do the run up. So any added benefit about just waiting to the end, or when I do it on the way out, as long as I do it. It's better than not.
It's better to do it at least anytime, but there's a lot of people that don't do it at all. But for me, like I said, I recommend doing it at the end of the day to get rid of the carbon.
One other question, on the antifreeze, replace the antifreeze, drain and replace it, or drain and flush it, what's your recommendation for that?
Depends on what service you're doing. If you're doing it every 2 or 3 years, you can just do a flush. You're spreading it out enough to where you should be draining it out. Typically, when you have to get about 1,000 hours on the end, is actually when you remove the heat exchanger and clean that completely separate from the rest of the engine. You're going to be cleaning that with some sort of acid. And depending on what the material of the heat exchanger is made out of, so what kind of acid you can use. So if it's made out of all copper, nickel, and copper, like this one. This one has not been cleaned, and so you can use like muriatic acid on this. There are a couple companies that are doing a sonic cleaning now, but a lot of these heat exchangers, like from Yamaha, instead of this copper sleeve, it's going to have a aluminum sleeve. So you can't put aluminum. Well, you can't put aluminum muriatic acid. But the problem is, it's only going to last about 30 seconds or so before it turns to Swiss cheese. So there's other chemicals on the market. There's Ridline Marine, which is a quote biodegradable marine solution, which it reacts with the aluminum, but it doesn't like turn it to Swiss cheese. If you're doing this over the winter and you got time, you can use just cleaning grade vinegar that you can buy at your local grocery store. So my grocery store sells Heinz. It's 6% active, especially if you're cleaning like the powerboat heat exchangers where you may need 6-7 gallons of the stuff to completely submerge the unit. Yeah, $3.99 a gallon is much cheaper than $40 a gallon of like Ridline. Muriatic acid is somewhere around $8 or $9 a gallon from hardware stores. Yeah, and muriatic acid is very, very unique. So is vinegar. Some people like the Thrasher's fries. Any other questions?
We're planning on making a long run down to the Bahamas next winter. What do you suggest maintenance on a motor that's got 1,000 hours on it? Is there anything you should look for? I mean, it runs perfect. It's not like you
first major service that the engine's supposed to get. What's included in the 1,000-hour services are typically pulling the injectors out, getting them checked and rebuilt, adjusting the valve clearances, pulling the heat exchanger, cleaning that, replacing your thermostat, pressure cap, all the molded hoses in the cooling system, pulling the transmission off, checking the damper plate to see if the springs or rubber components in the damper plate are good or need to be replaced. A lot of times engine mounts, all water, seawater pump gets replaced, engine line. So it's one engine, and you're looking at anywhere from.
Yeah, we just bought the boats, I don't know if the old owner did all of that, so.
Yeah,
I mean, it's part of it, could we get it for your engine?
Yeah, if you can get any kind of records, that helps.
Yeah,
But
take something out, so,
But yeah, it's generally a $2,000 to $5,000 for one engine.
yeah, it's worth it to.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work. It takes anywhere from 25 and 35 hours, depending on your access to the engine compartment.
I mean, if he had it done, we wouldn't know, it would be the records, but
Right.
we would check the injectors, check all this stuff.
I mean, sometimes when people do valve clearances at, at some point in time, the injectors, sometimes they get pulled out at 800 hours. Some people may have had something leaking on the seawater pump leaking, they've already replaced the pump, so you don't need that $600 item. Motor mounts, these MR mounts are expensive, they're about $150 or so a piece. The damper plate, it's not that expensive, it's usually about $225 for the plate itself, but pulling the transmission out of the way to get to it sometimes can be a pain. So there's a turbocharger over top of it, after cooler, where you gotta get that stuff out of the way to get the transmission out in order to gain access to it.
Valve adjustments on a diesel, is that necessary?
Yes. Yeah, the valve clearances is definitely a necessary procedure. It's a simple procedure, but adjusting the clearances of the space between the rocker arm and the top of the valve stem, that's what's determining when that valve opens and closes. So how long is that valve being pushed open and closing, which is determining how much air is getting in and out of that cylinder. So things wear, which then the clearances will get larger than they're supposed to be, and then so the valve will be opening late and closing early. So you're not going to be getting the correct air in and out of that cylinder, which then could cause smoking problems and hard starts. So, but an engine like this, I can knock this valve clearance out in probably under half an hour, depending on the access. You're going to pull the valve cover off and then go through the 4-cylinder procedure. It's really quick.
Oh, this is nice.
We kind of just jump into the question and answer. Right, diesel fuel. Diesel fuel is more like vegetable oil than it is to gasoline, and people have an issue of separating that in their minds because both of them get pulled out of the ground and refined, and the stock market affects the prices of both of them, and they're sold side by side at the same fuel station. So people just think they're very similar, and they both are using internal combustion engines. But the reality is, diesel fuel is more like vegetable oil. So it's more like cooking oil. So you gotta think about taking that diesel pump and putting it in your kitchen, because that's what it's more like. And actually, your engine can run off of vegetable oil once. The problem is the oil's a little bit too thick, so when you go to restart it, after shutting down on it, it's not going to want to flow through the system correctly.
Even if you run 100% for the last 3 minutes?
Yes. Diesel fuel is very safe, so I could put a 5-gallon bucket of diesel fuel in front of Scott here, light a match, throw a match into that 5-gallon bucket of diesel fuel, and the match will go out. If I put a 5-gallon bucket of gasoline in front of Scott, everyone will be rushing out the door, calling the cops on me. The match wouldn't even make it to the bucket before the vapors coming off the gas would ignite and then explode the gas. Wouldn't be good. Alright, so this is just a chart showing how much energy is in each of these types of fuels. So here we have diesel fuel. This is measured in BTUs per cubic foot. So we have diesel fuel, straight diesel fuel is at 1,058 BTUs. Biodiesel here at 950. Gasoline is at 922. But this is not the gasoline you can buy here in the U.S. Here in the U.S., we have, or not the U.S., in Maryland, I'm sorry. In Maryland, we have ethanol in our gas, which here is an E85 that's got ethanol in 690. So when you compare this to this number, look how much more gasoline you got to burn to do the same amount of work as diesel fuel. That's why diesel engines are all in these heavy-duty equipment, and, like fire trucks and dump trucks, and because it has more power. And then down here we have our propane, liquid natural gases, ethanols, methanols, and then down here we got the batteries. That's why the electric boat doesn't work.
That's a strange chart. Those are all different densities. It really should be per pound, not per cubic foot.
Talk to the energy.
U.S. Department of Energy.
Talk to them.
A strange way to make that comparison.
Yeah, well. Anyway, we're going to talk about Boyle's Law, auto ignition, compression ratios. Here's Boyle. You don't need to know him. He just came up with the idea as a relationship between pressure, volumes, and temperature. And actually, this formula is no longer used. There's another variable in there now, which we don't need to talk about. According to Nigel Calder, who's the author of the book we use at the school I teach for, he says the ignition point of diesel fuel is 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Like I said, if you look it up on the internet, it's 492 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't know where he got this number from. Possibly that all the pressures, everything is under in the inside the engine and the fuel system, and may require 750 at the higher pressures. I honestly don't know.
I think that's heavy fuel oil.
What?
That's heavy fuel oil, which you would run inside a Wärtsilä or something like that. That's not your high. That's not the stuff you can buy down here. The stuff you buy down here is your light fuel oil, which is what you run inside your high-speed diesels. That's about 450.
All right, compression ratios. So compression ratio is basically how much are we squeezing the air. So this is 20-to-1 ratio. This is graphically accurate. So if we squeeze this volume of air to 1/20th its original size, it's going to look like that. So we're going to go from roughly 70 degrees Fahrenheit up to about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see where we're going here. So we get that air temperature up to 1,000 degrees, and we spray atomized diesel fuel in that 1,000-degree environment. That fuel is going to auto-ignite. So vocabulary, this is what's known as bottom dead center. This is what's known as top dead center. Bottom dead center is the lowest point of travel the piston makes in the cylinder. Top dead center is the highest point of travel the piston makes in the cylinder. And the combination of the two is where we get our compression ratio, comparison between the two. So we inject atomized diesel fuel in the top of the cylinder in that hot environment. We're going to cause that diesel fuel to auto-ignite, and that fuel is going to combust, and we're going to get an expansion of the gases, which is going to force the piston down. At that moment in time is when we've taken fuel, air, and heat and converted that to mechanical force. Now the rest of the object is to kind of get that mechanical force to the propeller so we can push the boat through the water, or pull the boat through the water. So this particular moment is what we call the power stroke here in the U.S. If you're from Europe, it's called the expansion stroke. But here in the U.S., everything's about muscle and power. All right, two different types of fuel injection. We have directed fuel injection, which sprays the fuel directly on top of the piston, and indirect fuel injection is where the fuel is sprayed into a pre-combustion chamber before it goes into the cylinder. So the fire will actually start in the pre-combustion chamber and then enter the cylinder after it's already pre-combusted. It does not matter which one you have. You can't change it. The engineers have designed the engine with one or the other. We talked about surface area and spray patterns. Mechanical versus electronic, we already talked about. That's the hydraulic process versus the variables the engineers design the engine to be at, where the computer then can change all its own injection depending on what the variables are. Here's the good and bad spray patterns. So here we have a fairly decent cone coming out of this injector here, and this injector is the bad, where we have big gaps in the atomization. And we got some very hard lines here. So what we're looking for is more even cone coming out. This is what direct fuel injection looks like. So we got fuel spraying off in several angles on direct. Here's a glow plug right here. So you can see the tip glowing bright orange. So this piston's been cut away. This area right here on top of the piston is called a swirl cup. So when the piston's coming up, the air has movement inside that little cup. And then we spray the fuel in the opposite direction, which then we get a good fuel-air mix. So we get a cleaner burn. And it's just a good thing. So black smoke. Black smoke is from running rich. So it can be caused by defective spray patterns, ambient room temperatures, insufficient airflow either into the engine or out of the engine. An electronic fuel injection does away with this. The computer won't allow that to happen. If the computer notices something's wrong, it's going to change what it can, and if it can't get past whatever the problem is, then it will put you into what we call a limp mode, and only allow you to get up to a certain amount of RPMs just to get home, and then get the item fixed. All right, 4-stroke diesel cycle. So what's a stroke? A stroke, for you golfers, is a swing. What a stroke is the movement of the piston either down the cylinder or up in the cylinder. So the movement of the piston down is a stroke, the movement of the piston up the cylinder is a stroke. So we've got to go through 4 strokes to complete a whole cycle. So the first stroke is going to be the intake stroke. So we got, like I said, we got our valves on the top of the cylinder, we got an intake valve and an exhaust valve. So the intake valve is going to be open, the piston is going to move downward, which is going to create negative pressure, which is going to draw air into the cylinder. And then that valve is going to close. Now we've got a sealed cylinder. The piston is going to come up, and it's going to squeeze all that air, make the temperature go up. So we're going to create that 1,000 degrees in the cylinder. Just before we get to the very end of the compression stroke is when we're going to start injecting atomized fuel. Then we're going to get the power stroke. Bang. Piston's now forced down. And then the third stroke is the exhaust stroke, where we have the smoke in the cylinder, exhaust valve opens, piston comes back up and pushes all the smoke out of the cylinder. So every diesel course talk will tell you how to remember the 4 strokes by using 4 words: suck, squeeze, bang, and blow. This is what it looks like. So we have our valves here on the top. So we have an intake valve that's open. We've got arrows here. The piston moves down. So when the piston moves down, it creates negative pressure, causes air to travel into the cylinder. That valve closes. Now the piston comes up, squeezes all the air. Just before we get to the very top, this fuel injector starts spraying atomized fuel into the cylinder. The fuel ignites, then the piston is forced down. Now we have exhaust smoke in the cylinder. The exhaust valve opens, piston comes back up, pushes the smoke out the exhaust system. So suck, squeeze, and blow. 2-stroke. Anatomy. Do we need to get into anatomy? You want to get into anatomy?
No.
No? Okay. So now we know what other questions.
When you're running up the engine to blow out a profit center, do you want it loaded? In other words, is neutral okay or no?
No, you have to have a load on it.
Okay, have to have a load. How often do zincs need to be replaced?
Well, zincs are supposed to be checked once a month.
I see.
Everybody's face like what? I think it'll be after.
Now it should be checked once a month. The reality is you only have to replace them once a season, or once a year.
The engine.
Engine six, I'm not talking about running gear.
I have a mid-80s GM 2.0 Yanmar. The owner's manual says I have 2 zings. I've had a tech tell me I don't.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the manuals are wrong. The manuals are written for raw water cooled engines and closed cooling engines. So raw water cooled engines mean there's no antifreeze anywhere in the circuit. That we have seawater in a block and cylinder head. The closed cooling engines, 2-stage cooling, there's a heat exchanger. So we have two cooling systems on the edge. We have a closed circuit which has antifreeze in it, and an open circuit which is using raw water to cool the closed circuit. So on your car you have a radiator which we're blowing 60-mile-an-hour wind over pipes to cool the antifreeze down, but in our boats we don't have a 60-mile-an-hour wind blowing through our compartment. So we have to use a heat exchanger, which we're pulling cool seawater in from outside the boat, running them through a bunch of pipes, which then we're running the antifreeze over the outside of those pipes to make the heat transfer. So in those EMR manuals, they didn't separate what they were talking about when they were talking about the zincs, which they should have had it in the book. It should have said for the raw water cooled engines only, that the closed system engines don't have zincs.
So you've got raw water and antifreeze, no zincs.
Correct.
Thank you.
So the term zinc, although now it's anode, right?
Yeah, it's an anode now.
Okay, so now they're saying don't use zinc, use aluminum.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's even someone brought it up this morning for their sale drive, that the EMR's no longer selling the zinc, they're only selling the aluminum. Yeah, so I just ordered the department to really pay attention to what I'm putting on.
In changing the antifreeze, where's the drain on the JH, 4 JHs?
Okay, the JHs typically will have two or three drains, well, 3 drains actually. So there's one on the back corner of the exhaust manifold over here, and then there's one on the side of the block right here between the manifold and the circulation valve. There's a little drain in the front there.
How do you keep from making it? I mean, with engine oil you can suck it out, but with this you just have to gravity drain it.
Well, you have a Yanmar, so your Yanmar actually has really nice drains on them. So these drains actually have a little hose bar on it.
Okay.
So you put a little, like a 3-foot hose on it. You buy the clear vinyl 5/16 hose, push it right on the bar, open up the drain, and then it'll just drain into your bucket that you gravity drain it out. Versus a lot of other engine manufacturers, it's only a plug. So you pull the plug out and it just makes a mess everywhere. So Yanmar's, it's one of the best things Yanmar's done is put the $20 valves in the engine.
Not bad. So I just woke up on this subject, on the antifreeze. Do you replace it with the oil, and do your oil replace it with the antifreeze at the same time, or is there?
No, we're going to service the cooling system every 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years, okay.
Yeah.
Earlier you mentioned that you used a photo tag to get an accurate reading on RPM. How common is it that the instrumentation on the engine is accurate or inaccurate? Inaccurate.
Yeah, I mean, any electrical component can be inaccurate, and if you're dealing with oil pressure or temperature, I mean, it's easy for it to be off 5 to 10 degrees. Especially if you ever overheated the engine and the needle is pegged against a pin, then there's a little coil type of rheostat in there which will overexpand, and then the needle is no longer accurate. So it's common enough where we have to talk about it.
I've got a fuel polisher on board put on by a previous owner. I never use it. Is that gonna cause any problems down the line?
No, by not using it, is it gonna affect the polisher? No. But by not using it, you're not cleaning your fuel. polishing system on it. I mean, polishing systems are typically for boats that have large capacity fuel, and you won't use the capacity, and so that fuel stays around a long, long time. So you run a polisher, which is like a it's just a fancy word for filtering.
It's only 38 gallons, and I go through that probably.
How much?
38.
38 gallons? Yes, someone was reading too much from Pastor Maker magazine. 38 gallons is not a large capacity tank. Yeah, like super trawlers are the ones that really, really need polishing systems. They may hold 6,000 gallons and then have engines that only use 10 gallons an hour. So you're hardly using any of the fuel capacity they have. So they have to keep running the fuel through filters in order to keep the tanks clean. 38 gallons I wouldn't say it was enough to spend that kind of money on.
Sometimes you talk engine hours, sometimes you talk years. Does it just matter what system you're working on?
Well, in the sailing industry, your sailboats, usually they don't see very many hours. And so a lot of things are done on a yearly basis. So with the power boats, usually putting a lot more time on the engines. So you go the hourly rate. Your maintenance schedule in your owner's manuals will give you both. It'll say 2 years or 100 hours, 200 hours. It'll break it down both ways, whichever comes first, basically. It equates to.
In the Raycor filters, where you have the bowl at the bottom that you can see, if there's no sediment or water or anything in there, is it necessary to change those filters?
Just because you don't see anything in the bowl doesn't mean it's not captured in the filter. The only way to know for sure is to pull apart and inspect it to see if the filter has visible signs of water or debris.
And if you do get into that, are you going to have to bleed the system?
Depends on the design of your breaker.
How it's laid out?
If you have the 500 series, 900 series, or 1000 series, no, you won't have to bleed it unless you drain the whole unit down. But if it's a style with the T-handle on the top and the lid comes off, you can just pull the filter out, put the new element in, replace a couple O-rings, have some spare fuel, top it back up, and put it all back together. And all the air will, purge the air out by just adding it to the top. So you won't have to bleed those. But if you have a solid Raycor, as you unscrew the filter and you unscrew the bowl from the filter and you put that bowl onto the new filter, you have to bleed the system on those.
And on the Cummins 6 BPA 5.9, 2,000 hours, when I was changing the air cleaner filter, I noticed up inside that small turbo, it's like a little dirty, the blades of the fan and whatnot. Is there like a maintenance or a cleaning procedure for those turbo units there?
I can't say for Cummins whether they have a cleaning procedure, but I know the Yamars, it's in the maintenance schedule to do something called a turbo wash. And that turbo wash they sell us, Yamar has a special cleaner that you gotta go on a sea trial. While you're on a sea trial, they're spraying this substance into the turbo, which helps clean off the oil and the carbon off of the turbo fins. It's supposed to pull through the system and then go through the exhaust side and clean up the exhaust side. But personally, I've never seen it do anything on the exhaust side, but it does clean the intake side, which can build up with oil on it.
How often did you say this?
I believe it's, I don't want to misquote it, but it's in your maintenance schedule.
Can you just take off that oil filter and reach up in there and wipe things down and whatnot? Is that
The air filter?
Yeah, the blades on the turbo.
Yeah, I mean, you can get in there with a towel and wipe any residue. But a lot of times the fins are very fragile, so they can bend. So you don't want to bend the blades. Too much pressure.
And earlier you talked about a seal in there on the exhaust side of the turbo.
Well, there's a seal, there's the shaft that's connecting the inlet turbine to the exhaust turbine. There's a shaft between the two.
So there's two turbines in that turbo.
Yeah, so it's two turbos, basically, or it's a single turbo, but there's two turbines. One in an intake housing and one in the exhaust housing, and they're connected together via a shaft. And the shaft spins anywhere between 60 and 120,000 revolutions per minute. So there's a dedicated oil line dumping oil over top of that shaft to keep it cool. And so there's seals on each side of that shaft to keep the oil in the center versus allowing the oil to get to the turbines.
The special tools to get into that required to get into that?
You're not getting to it.
Not for you.
If you get to it, you're gonna end up with a box of parts.
Scott, I have a 3YM20 Yamaha engine, and I have on the primary filter of 30 microns. Someone told me that I should use not a 40 but a 10 micron. One of my neighbors on the pier, should I change that to a 10 micron?
The Yamaha likes to see the 30.
To keep the 30?
Yeah, because what we have is a rubber diaphragm pump. And if you, the smaller the micron rating, so a 30 is the coarse filter, 10 is a medium, and 2 is a fine filter. So the finer the filter that you're trying to pull fuel through, because that's on the suction side of that lift pump, the low pressure pump. And the finer the filter you put in there, the harder it's got to pull. So the more vacuum it's got to make, so it deteriorates the rubber and the rubber diaphragm sooner. So you'll shorten the life of that filter. So they want the higher micron rating to extend the life of because your on-engine filter is the fine filter, which is designed to filter out the particles to protect the injection pump and the injectors. So that's the fine filter. You don't want to over-filter the fuel before it gets to that side of the system.
So that's a 10?
Yamaha won't tell you what it is. They don't want you going to Napa and buying a replacement.
Well, let's, for the sake of argument, if that's a 10, what do you recommend on the rate core side?
30. Yeah, so this is going to be anywhere between a 2 and a 7, or a 2 and a 10 as a secondary fuel filter.
Is there a difference between diesel at a fuel dock and diesel at a gas station?
Just the color, the dye. We have the red dye in our fuel. And that red dye is not for us. That red dye is for the truck drivers. If they get caught with red dye fuel, it means they're bypassing our tax system. That red dye means that there has not been road tax applied to that fuel. So if a truck driver gets caught with red fuel, that means they're not paying road tax on the fuel, which is a lot cheaper. So number 2, fuel, heating fuel, is the same thing that we're using in our boats, which is a lot cheaper than buying the untaxed fuel.
Fogging the cylinder.
How do you do that?
Well, you do that to a gas engine?
Yeah, that's what I'm used to doing that on outboard. So, is it necessary?
No.
Okay.
No, our diesel fuel is an oil.
So it just coats anyway, so it's.
Yeah, so when I winterize, before I shut the engine down, I'll rev the RPMs up to like 2,000 to 3,000 RPMs. While it's at that high RPMs when I hit the kill switch.
Okay.
And that over fuels the cylinder, which coats everything in diesel fuel for the winter, which keeps down the surface rust.
Conventional wisdom is to fill your tanks before winter haul out. It would seem to me that the top of the tank is almost always in the air if you're not going to fill it up, fill the nozzle. So does it really make any difference?
Yes. The larger the air void in the tank, the more air that's going to be traveling in and out of the tank through the vent. And the more air you have, the more moisture that can enter your tank. So if you keep the tank full, you're going to have less air void, so you're going to get less moisture in the tank. And it's the moisture that you get in the tank which allows the microbes to grow. So if you keep the moisture out, you're going to help you keep the microbes from growing.
Back to the lecture.
We're at the question and answer now. So we didn't want to do the anatomy, so.
You said running 100% the last few minutes. Are you getting a kickback from Exxon?
So that was the same on all Yamaha, right? If you have a 4JH, you should get a 30 micron radar.
Yes. I mean, the newer common rail Yamahs have their own primary and so you just use that filter.
When you're using the photo tech, where are you aiming on the engine, the time?
We wanna measure the RPMs of the crankshaft. So the front pulley, the crankshaft pulley, the front one that's the lowest, that's our crankshaft, so we'll put the reflective tape on that.
What brand or photo tech are you using?
I use Snap-on.
What do they cost?
Photo techs? The Snap-on photo tech, I think was $325. I think. Yeah, they work.
They all work, it's a simple circuit.
I don't know, I bought the $29 one before and never worked out of the package. It reads 0, no matter where you aimed it on that sticker, it would never. If something goes wrong, you go here. So give me a little back.
What do you tell people to carry as spare parts and that kind of thing? Commercially.
Okay, spare parts. You have your weekend warriors, which is one type of spare part, and then you have your cruisers, which is another spare parts kit. The weekend warriors, you want your fast moving parts. So you're looking at your oil filters, fuel filters, air filter, belts, impellers, those kinds of items. Now, if you're going real cruising, then you're going to want the larger items, especially if you're going out into the ocean, where you're not going to be able to get FedEx to you. So on those, you're going to have the same low end spare kit, but instead of having just one fuel filter and one this one, you're going to have multiples of those. But then you're going to add like a complete seawater pump, a whole brand new seawater pump. You're going to have a whole brand new starter. You may have a whole brand new alternator. Thermostat, a complete gasket set for the entire engine. Spare fuel injectors. And depending on your wallet, some people buy a heat exchanger. Every molded hose on the boat or on the engine, so they're ready for pretty much almost anything. The one thing that they don't carry is an injection pump. It's typically one thing that they don't carry. Because injection pumps really don't go bad that often. When they do go bad, it's usually be a small sign that they're going bad, but if you're making a big passageway, that could be an issue. Most of the people that we deal with these spare kits are sailors, so they can at least put the sails up and continue moving. They just have to then start monitoring their battery usage.
Based on your 30 years of experience, can you give us some thoughts on the different brands, makes of engines, durability, accessibility, cost of repair, complexity?
I don't want to offend anyone.
You've acquired all this knowledge, and most of us have experience with maybe 1 to 2 brands of engines.
Now, there's different levels and reasons for what I like or dislike engines. Like Yanmars, I like them because they're really easy to work on mostly, and the parts are readily available. And they're in 80+% of the boats on the market. In the repower market, I like the Kubota-based engines. They are really easy to service. I'm a Beta Marine dealer, which uses a Kubota engine. But I'm not just Beta biased because I'm a dealer. They have put a lot of thought power process into the design of their engines. It's designed for ease of service, which is not good for me. It's good for you all. Because they made changing the oil simple. They made changing the fuel filters simple. Changing the impellers is simple. Where they located everything, they put thought process about where they put the dipstick. Okay, it's up high. Everyone can find it. You don't have to reach to the side of the engine and use the Braille method to find a hole that the dipstick is. Every the engine gets sold with an oil change pump on it. So you have a little hand pump that you use to change oil. The impeller's almost always forward facing on the front of the engine, so in most boats, that's easy to service. They do, on a lot of the engines, have an option to face it the opposite direction, so if you're like a V drive, where the engine's now facing another direction, you can still get to the impellers easily. And then there's some manufacturers that have taken a simple design and then just put their own twist on it to overcomplicate it. And so one of those engines, the Perkins did that on their electrical systems on their Prima series, where they must have put like 20 diodes in their electrical system. Which a diode is an electrical check valve, for those of you that don't know. And trying to troubleshoot the electrical system can be a major headache, because you got to check each one of these diodes through the circuit. Volvo did the same thing, not with the electrical side, but with the cooling system. So instead of just using hose and clamps to connect something, they decided to use copper tubes where they put like a seal ring on the outside of it, push it up into a bore, and then take this like little type of fork and bolt the fork over the end of it to hold it up inside of its place, in its bore. If you get a little tiny bend in that copper tube on disassembling, it's not going to seal back up. So they're taking something that was really simple and made it where you have to buy their parts in order to work on it. And then it has a high failure rate if you have to disassemble it. So one engine, you have to pull these copper pipes off in order to get the impeller out. You need access to the seawater pump. And so you're bending, you have the chance of bending the pipes, and then it leaks seawater when we put it back together. So they've taken something simple and they've really overcomplicated. Out of the larger horsepower engines, I'm a big Cummins fan. I'm a big Cummins fan. Even on their common rails, they kept it basic. Once you start going up in horsepower, usually it's the same as the lower horsepower sailboat engines. Just everything starts getting bigger in size. But the theory and everything is the same. And I really like the Cummins here. They kept it simple. Turbocharger, aftercooler, heat exchanger, everything just bolts on and off easily, nothing complicated to it.
A fuel question. I've got a 32-year-old boat, and I have no idea, what kind of sludge might be building up in the bottom of my fuel tank. Do you think about cleaning out the fuel tank, or just keep going and something goes wrong? Not just touch wood if it goes wrong yet.
What size is the tank? 18 gallons? Such a small tank. I mean, you could, if you were worried about it, you could just pump it all out and put fresh fuel in. It's only 18 gallons. So you use it for the season. You get, most people, you only burn about half a tank throughout the season, and then just pump the rest of it out. And as you're pumping it out, take a good sample off the bottom to see if there's any debris on the bottom of the tank, and you put it into a clear bottle or something so you can see if there's any sediment.
I honestly don't use it. Use so little fuel inside. I have no idea what the actual tank is. So, okay.
Yeah, and I like when I change the fuel filters for my customers, I like to really inspect the primary filter. It gives me an idea what's going on in the tank. Because all the large debris will be captured in that primary.
What if it's a larger tank?
For a larger tank, instead of just pumping it dry, you would then invest in having a fuel polishing company come out and polish the tank.
There's no way to pull it off the bottom?
Well, the way the polishing system works is usually they pull the center out of the tank and then take a pipe and go to the bottom of the tank and then run it through their large filters and return it back to the tank. And so they're moving their pipe over the bottom and trying to vacuum out as much as they can. The major problem is marine fuel tanks are baffled these are sectioned off from one, and that's because it's something called free surface effect. So when the boat lifts, liquid wants to run to the lowest point, and on a boat, if you allow all that liquid to run to one part of the boat, it can actually cause the boat to roll over. So you put baffles in, then it doesn't allow that liquid to travel really quickly to the lower end of the tank. You know, if the boat leaks, which then gives the boat enough time to come off the wave and straighten itself back out. And because of those baffles are there, you can only basically clean one section between two baffles. That most tanks don't have an access point over the other baffle sections.
Now, if the tank is small enough, it probably doesn't have a bath. It's 25 gallons, does it have a bath?
Probably. I mean, I don't remember what the specifics are as to the gallons wise. It's when it has to have the baffle. The marine tanks are baffled.
Parts available for total rebuild with, let's say, an 8060 Admiral versus replacement?
Yes. Right now, you can still get all the parts. I don't believe they sell oversized pistons and rings for the engines anymore. I think the EPA has put a stop to that, because that changes the emissions coming out of the engine. So if you have bad cylinders, then you have to have a machine shop sleeve it, which would go back to the standard piston sizes. But they used to have oversized pistons and rings available where you just bore it out larger. Put the larger pistons and rings in it.
What time do you open on Monday?
We're open 8 to 5.
I'm just curious, what is the current retail price of a Yanmar like 40 horsepower?
I don't know Yanmar prices off the top of my head. I'm gonna say it's probably about 12,000, 12,000 for 40 horsepower.
Plus labor.
What's that?
Plus labor.
Plus labor. Well, that's just the engine. Yeah, that's probably a boat show price, not the retail in this places.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.